Barn raising was a common method of erecting structures around 18th and 19th century North America. The local community would come together and collectively build a barn for one of its members. Recently, Co-Living Network Captain and I asked the question, what might a barn raising look like in the modern age? What if members of an online community were to gather in real life around a common goal and get something real, something tangible, built? What would that feel like? Over the past 2 weeks, we answered that question. This is the story of a group of internet strangers meeting up in the middle of Texas and building a bathhouse.
Is it filming right now?
If there's a red dot,
It's blinking.
Try, let's get a quick look back, just briefly. Yeah, there we go.
I'm not including that in the video.
Yeah, no, that's gonna get cut.
no way.
For sure.
That's definitely getting cut. After spending the previous day gathering the troops, we started off day one talking about what we were aiming to accomplish, as well as how Eileen and I planned on structuring the build weeks. I was the build captain, meaning that it was my duty to find ways for each attendee to contribute to building out the property. Most of the time that was easy, as our main goal of building the bathhouse from scratch involved a lot of work. But for the times where we're at a stage in the build where the work involved a maximum of, say, 2 people, I needed to ensure that there was a ready list of other ways people could help out. Such tasks were things like adding stonework to the paths or installing the flooring in the shed room. We called these side quests. Eileen was the build week host. She was in charge of coordinating transportation to and from the airport, ensuring the fridge was stocked with good food and beer, and organizing events for us to do as a group once we were done building for the day, if we wanted to do anything at all. We made a great team. After a hard morning of digging holes for the foundation, we braked for a swim, met a dragon, and Eileen made a really good salad. Our afternoon was spent pouring the concrete piers. For the taller ones, we added rebar reinforcement to strengthen them and help avoid cracking. For many of the piers, we also added a bunch of rocks to fill volume, as we were worried that we were going to run out of concrete. When doing this, we made an effort to try and get the concrete into all the voids that the stack rocks created, but I learned the next day that on one of the piers, we had failed to do so. Luckily, we still had a bag of concrete left. Our building inspector seemed a little displeased with the mishap, but ultimately approved the solution. As we were pouring the concrete, Jackson was making up for his lack of work in the morning by going toe-to-toe with a rock that we needed gone in order to complete the bathhouse's connection to the septic system. He told me that he had never felt so powerful, yet completely powerless at the same time. In the end, he won. Once all piers were poured, we all signed our names into the concrete and called it a day. That first day ended up being our hardest. It was a bit of a trial by fire. We were all dusty and sore by the end of it. And yet, the next day, the team came back with attitudes unchanged, ready to create the floor frame. That day, we took the weekly cabin call as a group before lunch. On the topic of calls, throughout the build weeks, everyone was free to take calls or meetings or get some personal work done as they pleased. People would dip in and out of work, meaning sometimes it would be just me, like this morning. But that was a rare occurrence. Most of the time, there was plenty of hands available for any task. Okay, let's take a step back. So why were we building a bathhouse? This property that we're all gathered on, referred to as Neighborhood Zero, is one of the co-living communities in the co-living network of Cabin. There's dreams to turn it into its own little village, and to do so, we've got to build a lot more housing capacity. We got started on that with our shed rooms. These will essentially be tiny houses, just without a bathroom. Reason being is installing the infrastructure necessary to hook up each of the 2 planned shed rooms to the septic system would be a back-breaking amount of work. The ground here is, well, rock. Our way to designing around this was to create a bathhouse, meaning a literal house that consists of only bathrooms. This one will have 3, each equipped with their own shower, toilet, vanity, and separate entrance. Another reason we decided to create the bathhouse was to provide bathrooms to those who visit during the day. For these build weeks, there were plenty of these people. Prior to the bathhouse, visitors would have to ask for permission from one of the residents in the container house to use their bathroom. We wanted to eliminate the need for that type of interaction. An example of one of the activities we did as a group was the time we went to a haberdashery. That's the word for a hat shop. I know, I also thought they were hatching Pokemon or something. They were super friendly, even served us beer, and my Texan hat finally found me. From there, we went to a classic Texan barbecue, explored the town a bit, and climbed a massive couple 100-year-old oak tree. Other times were often also centered around food. And I must say, these build weeks attracted some incredible chefs. Special shout out to Chris for his amazing French toast. That was bougie, and a great start to a wonderful morning. Most nights, there'd be a group utilizing the sauna and cold plunge combo. Halfway through Build Week 2, this birthed hot seat hot takes, which lended itself to some insightful, honest conversation, but I'll leave that in the sauna. Everyone had their own schedule for when they were attending these build weeks. Some stayed for a couple days, others a week and a half. One thing I learned is that you'd be surprised by the depth of the connections you make with people when you live close together and gather around a common goal. I think even more so when your goal is to build something physical, as with every major milestone in the construction process, the potential for new experiences are formed. In a previous build week, a team built the sauna, and once they were finished, they were able to hang out in it, just like we were doing most nights. For us, when we installed the subfloor of the bathhouse, all of a sudden we had a deck and spent that night on it looking up at the stars. When we raised the final wall, we then had an outdoor room that we could hang lights from, bring in the sawhorses, and christen the bathroom with a couple games of beer pong and stack cup.
I can't play music and record at the same time, so keep dancing like there's music.
Cold, hot and by you.
It was great to see that such connections seemed to last too, yet in a very low effort kind of way, which is one of the best kinds of friendships if you ask me. Dave, Luca, and Nick had previously met at another build week in Puerto Rico and used this one as an opportunity to link up. Other reasons people had to come out were to get away from laptop work or learn a thing or two about construction. That was something I tried to foster, and did so by sharing the reasoning for each step in the construction process, teaching how I came up with the design, and also giving agency to builders, trusting them completely with a task that needed to get done after a short description of how I would tackle it if I felt they needed it. After a week of working with their hands, people like Em and Andre had evolved into some incredible builders that were often informing me on how we could make the process more efficient. By the end of the 2 weeks, we had completed the foundation, floor frame, walls, and front deck of the bathhouse. We had also connected to the container house's septic system and water supply, ran both those lines to the bathhouse, and filled the trench. There were plenty of side quests that were completed too. We built an outdoor gym, added a flagstone path, installed the ceiling and flooring for the shed room, and created an entire geocaching scavenger hunt style game to familiarize people with the property. It's exciting to imagine what this place might look like in 10, 20 years. And while it's fun to dream about, it's impossible to predict. This isn't a project that's being designed in its entirety by a single architect, but a constellation of unique additions from all sorts of people with differing backgrounds. When my stay here comes to an end, someone else will step in and begin building something else. Future build weeks will birth new connections and expansions on the property that I never would have conceived. The resulting neighborhood will be one that was grown organically by the community, with dozens of fingerprints on it, as opposed to just one. If this sparked your interest about co-living and you think you might want to give it a try, head to cabin.city to learn more. Cheers.